Hi everybody and welcome to the channel. My name's Paul Reed, I'm a British photographer. My main love is monochrome images. Anybody that is already subscribed to the channel will already know that, and know that my main camera that I use at the moment is a Leica Q2 Monochrom. So the M11 Monochrom has been announced, and I just wanted to give you my thoughts, not just on that camera, but it seemed a good time to talk about what this is all about. You know, what is this this monochrome sensor all about? What's the benefits? What's the point in it all? Why would you spend like £10,000 or just to get a black and white only camera? It seems absolutely crazy. Firstly, let me just tell you what the benefits are from a monochrome sensor camera, because there are situations when a color censored camera will just give you as good results. Where a monochrome censored camera comes into play is at higher ISOs. Now, when I say higher ISOs, I'm not talking about 3200, 6400 and above. I'm talking about anything like from 800, 1600. The difference in shadow detail from a color censored camera and a monochrome censored camera are night and day. They are two completely different things. If you try to bring the shadows up on a color camera sensor, no matter how good it is, no matter how modern that camera is, and you've shot that image at 1600 ISO or above, when you start to try and bring those shadows up, the noise that is in those shadows just completely overcomes the detail in the images. On a monochrome sensor camera, that is not the case. The shadow detail from a monochrome sensor camera is absolutely incredible at 1600, 6400 and beyond. Now, if you shoot an image at say 200 ISO on a Leica M11, and then you also shot an image on the Leica M11 Monochrom, also at 200 ISO, the chances are there will be no difference in those images. So if you shoot at low ISOs, then the chances are a monochrome sensor camera really isn't going to give you any benefit. Some people really enjoy the limitation of a monochrome sensor camera. Now, these are the sorts of people, and I am kind of a little bit like this, where they'll import their image into Lightroom and they'll see it in color, even though maybe they've decided at the point of shooting that it was going to be a monochrome image. But then they import it into Lightroom and they see that image and it's in color. Okay, they've got their JPEG, which maybe is in monochrome, and their raw file in color. They then sit there and contemplate which is best, and they start to second guess, should this be monochrome or should it be color? And they can't decide. Now, like I said, I am a little bit like that, where I think, oh, does it look better in color or does it look better in monochrome? And it kind of can take away from that initial thought of why you took the photograph in the first place. So for those types of people, a monochrome censored camera really makes sense. So what types of photography really benefit from having a monochrome only sensor? If you're a street photographer and love zone focusing, and you're wanting to shoot at f8 and say 500th of a second, just so that you can almost be sure that you're going to freeze motion, then a monochrome sensor camera is a real benefit. The reason being is because you could just put that camera in auto ISO, let it decide what it wants to go up to, and shoot in 500th of a second and f8 all day long outside, even if it's not a sunny day, even if it was a dull day, you could. So it's a real benefit for a street photographer who just wants to shoot, who just wants to forget about, oh, is that going to be too high, that ISO? So it's a real benefit for somebody who's a street photographer who just wants to shoot and just forget about all of that side of things. I have had situations where having the Leica Q2 Monochrom has really saved an image. So this image, for example, I had to shoot this in very low light. I couldn't light it, even though I had brought lights with me, I couldn't light it because no matter where I would put those lights, you would see them. And it would have been a very complicated lighting setup just because of how everybody is posed and where they're standing. Yeah, there's ways that I could have lit that. You know, I could have put the camera on a tripod and then just moved the light around and then went into Photoshop or something like that afterwards, removed the light stand and light. However, that would have been an awful lot of work, and I'm just not that guy who likes to shoot on a tripod. I hate shooting on a tripod. I hate that constrictive nature of it. A lot of the times I'm shooting with one hand. I just like things to be dynamic. And in this situation, I handheld the camera and it was a slightly higher ISO. It wasn't like crazy high ISO, but I did have to bring shadow detail and everything up afterwards in this image because the lighting was just not good. So in situations like that, a monochrome sensor camera is just going to be such a huge benefit. Now, the price of an M11 Monochrom it's way up there, and it really, you know, it's not going to be in a lot of people's price range, and that causes a lot of people as well to really kind of put that down, you know, put the camera down or put the technology down, put monochrome sensors down, because they know that there's no way that they could afford that camera. It's easier for them to put it down rather than recognize the benefits of having a monochrome sensor camera. Now, whenever I first was wanting to purchase a monochrome sensor camera, there was a lot less choice back then. You had the original M Monochrom, the M9 Monochrom. You had the Leica M246 and you had the Leica M10 Monochrom. Now, the M10 Monochrom would have been the one that I would have purchased just because I think that particular monochrome sensor camera was a real game changer in the detail that you could pull out of it. But the price of it was just so high, just like the M11 Monochrom is now. So I just kept looking at these cameras all the time, watched YouTube videos on them, and I just, you know, it was just so far out of my price range. But whenever the Leica Q2 Monochrom came out, it was half the price. So it seemed like a no-brainer at the time. And, you know, I've had just such a great time shooting with this camera. It's starting to look a little bit battered now, but of course, you know, like a shooter's always kind of almost like that little bit of brassing on their cameras for some reason. I think it's just so that they can say, hey, I use my Leica all the time. It's not just an ornament. One of the questions that I get asked more than any question is, do you use filters? So people get really excited about the fact that with a monochrome sensor camera that you can put filters, different colored filters on the lens, and you can get different results. Just like you did in the film days when you'd put a black and white film in your camera and you could get different looks from your images by putting a color filter on the lens. Let's say you put an orange filter on your Q2 Monochrom, okay? And you're out, and your purpose of using that filter is that you're wanting the skies to be darker and you want in, say, you know, orangey buildings and things, them to stand out more. And it's doing the trick, it's doing the purpose. But then a person walks along and you suddenly want to take a picture of that person. That person is going to look pale, white, pretty much like a ghost. And if they have blue eyes, their eyes will go like two black balls. It's not a good look. And I really don't understand anybody that's going out shooting street photography using an orange filter. It's cutting the light down as well by who knows how many stops. But those images with an orange filter on portraits and people just don't look good. The next time that somebody's taken a picture with an orange filter on their monochrome sensor camera and it's of a person, have a look at their eyes, because they look evil. Stay away from the orange filter for that sort of thing. If you know for sure that you're in the middle of nowhere and you really want to kind of darken those skies down and things, then yeah, by all means use an orange filter. But if you're kind of taking pictures in general at any point, don't be shooting it with an orange filter. And certainly don't go out at night and use an orange filter, because you're already, going to be shooting at higher ISOs. You don't want to put those ISOs up even higher. For what reason? For no reason, just so that you can be using an orange filter. It just doesn't make sense at night at all. You would be much better just doing the editing afterwards, to be honest. You can easily darken skies down, even on a monochrome image, even without having the use of the color channels. You can, the selection tools are absolutely crazy now in Lightroom. You can easily select areas of your image, even if it's a monochrome image, without using the color sliders, because you can use all those different gradients to do that. So you'd be much better doing that in post-process rather than putting a filter on the camera that limits you in such a way that's not really beneficial at times. When I was about to purchase my Leica Q2 Monochrom, I watched a video it had been viewed a lot, you know, it had thousands of views, and it was comparing the Leica Q2 to the Leica Q2 Monochrom. And that video said there were no differences between the images of the Q2 and the Q2 Monochrom, and thousands of people watched that video. Well, I can tell you now that somebody that just gets one of these cameras for a few hours or a day and then just shoots at the base ISO, yeah, that's what they're going to discover. They're going to see no difference in the images. But give that person that camera for some weeks or a few months, and they're going to see that there is a huge difference in a monochrome sensor and a color sensor. But what about this thing about blowing highlights? You know, that's something which comes up so often, is be careful of the highlights. You need to underexpose all of your images, all of that sort of thing. Now, highlights, blowing highlights isn't always a bad thing, believe it or not. Nor is crushing blacks. Let me give you an example of that. So say you're doing a portrait of somebody and it's indoors and there's a window to the left of them and you can see the window in the image. Do you think there's any benefit, if this is a portrait of a person, do you think there's any benefit by retaining the highlights in that window or just letting it blow out? Well, in my opinion, I would just let those highlights blow out. I wouldn't expose for those highlights, because those highlights are irrelevant, because they're not actually what you're wanting the viewer to look at. But let's say you're taking a landscape image and you're really wanting to retain detail in the sky. then yes, absolutely don't blow those highlights out. You would expose for the sky, but I think, would you not do this anyway if you were shooting with a colour censored camera? I don't know, maybe not. Maybe I've shot with a monochrome sensor camera for such a long time that if I ever think that highlights are really important in an image, then I would normally expose for those highlights rather than the shadows. One thing that I have seen is a lot of really horrible grey images from monochrome sensor cameras that people have posted on social media or Instagram. They're not editing those images correctly, and what they are trying to do is they're trying to retain all the highlight detail, they're bringing up all of the shadows and all of the blacks, and then what they're left with is this just completely grey, mushy image that doesn't show any contrast whatsoever. Just because you can do something doesn't mean to say that you should. So retaining all those highlights and bringing all those shadows up can really ruin an image. If you want to crush some blacks, crush those blacks. If you want to blow out some highlights, blow out those highlights, as long as the subject is exposed correctly. As soon as the M11 Monochrom was announced, and you just look at all the comments on it, and you know, most people are just saying, why not just change it afterwards into black and white and all that sort of thing. And I get it, and you're going to get a lot of that, but don't let that put you off you buying a monochrome sensor camera, because those people don't know. Take it from me, there are massive benefits to shooting with the monochrome of some description. Most of these people that are really putting monochrome sensor cameras down have never even used one of them before, or maybe they've just used one for a few hours or a day. They certainly haven't been printing anything out from that camera. I have. I've printed silver gelatin prints from it. I've printed platinum palladium prints, which goes hand in hand with the Q2 Monochrom. It's just such a perfect match, the Q2 Monochrom to platinum palladium prints. As usual, I always tell you, if you want to print platinum palladium, or you want to learn how to print with platinum palladium, I always put the link in my description for RJ Print Lab, who will give you just a fantastic workshop on how to print platinum palladium prints. I really hope that this video has cleared things up a little bit for anybody that hasn't been sure, and there's a lot of information out there in videos, and lots of people, you know, really kind of putting monochrome sensor cameras down. I really hope that this has cleared up any confusion, and if not, then please use the comment section, and if there's anything that I've left out, you know, then just put it in the comments and I'll try to answer those questions. In the last video I was asked a question, and also had some messages asking the same question, and that was asking about my online workshops and what they're all about. Also, people asked about the mentorships as well. So the workshops, so the online workshops, they are the first session, that's about 1 hour, and they're all over Zoom. That's a get to know each other session really, and it's for me to get to know of what your skill level is right now. It's an opportunity for you to ask any questions that you want to ask. That could be to do with the settings which I use on my camera, just anything at all like that. But it really is for me to kind of tailor the rest of the sessions to you, so that I know, you know, what your skill level is and what it is that you're going to benefit from. Session number 2, that's normally about 2 hours long, and what that is all about is lighting, composition, my approach. It's about how to draw the viewer's eye to look at what you want them to see in your images. It's all about shooting from the heart. that's a really great session, and it does run on about 2 hours. So that's what that session's all to do with. The last session is the editing and how I edit my images. It also gives you the opportunity to send me your images so that I can edit your images and also show you how I did that in that third session. So that's what the online workshops are all about. I've had so much good feedback about those, and I'm just doing them all the time and really love doing them, and I've got to know such amazing people as well throughout. The mentorships is something that's a little bit more long-term than the workshops. That is for people who have already got a skill level of photography, and you're either trying to come up with a project and a body of work, and you need my critique on your images, you need some brainstorming to do with what project you're going to actually come up with. It'll be how you're going to print the work. It'll be, you know, are you going to do a book? Are you going to do a zine? Are you going, you know, all of these different things. And right along the way, it might be that I'll have a look at your images and say, I would edit that slightly different, or can you go back and reshoot that? And it's really something that you can just pull on all of the knowledge that I've gained over the years. So that's for 3 months, and that's a session, a Zoom session every 2 weeks. And it also makes you accountable to keep going with your photography and to complete those projects that you've got on the go. So if you want to book either a workshop or a mentorship with me, I'll be totally happy to help. Have a look in the description, and again you'll find in there a link to my contact form, and then I'll give you all the information and pricing details. As usual, please like, please comment, and all that sort of caper that we have to do to keep these YouTube algorithms working correctly, and I shall see you on the next one.